Hi everyone, I'm Jose Rosario, and for this video I'm going to be showing you a spot in my hometown of Fort Lee, New Jersey. Behind me here is the visitor center for where we are, which is called, very creatively, Historic Park. Here in this site was a fort that was created hastily by George Washington to hold off the British after they captured New York. And although the history was brief, this was a place where revolutionary history happened. And so throughout this video, we're going to be exploring some of the cool locations in this park and what they mean in the broader historical context. For an introduction here, I thought I'd start off with this very beat up but still serviceable placard that it's in front of the visitor center. I'm just going to read a little bit about this blurb, and as you can see, there's a map of this location. And it says that this giant bluff rock, which as we'll see later is located basically on a huge cliff, was a strategic stronghold in the American War for Independence. And it was around this fortification that Washington laid out encampments to delay the British in coming through from New York to New Jersey. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the historical narrative of this location. And although it was important, it was relatively brief and is contained within 1776. So as we know, the Patriots are beaten pretty badly by the British in New York and are forced to surrender the city. And so Washington retreats, and he sets up this fort right across in New Jersey in an attempt to stop, if not at least slow down, the British advance. And so they build this fort. It's held down by General Charles Lee, who this is named after, and although they're able to hold off the British for a little while, in a couple of months, the British ultimately capture it by November 1776, and the defenders are forced to retreat across New Jersey. I'm going to talk a little about the geography of this location, and as you're going to see in a moment, it becomes quite apparent why this geography is so important for this location, why it becomes a site of a fort. Right now where I'm situated is called the Palisades, which are basically a giant cliff running along the New Jersey side of the Hudson River. Just past these trees that you can see is a cliff that probably drops something like 300 feet, which is why there's this fence here to stop people from doing stupid things like rolling down. And the reason why this is important is because what you overlook here is Manhattan, New York City. And if anyone tries to cross over the Hudson River, you can just place some cannons here. And that's precisely what happens and what we're going to look at next. As you can see here, this was one of several locations where cannons were located along the site of this fort. Now, these aren't the original cannons that were here, but these replicas serve to demonstrate what it would have looked like when it was placed. As you can see, these overlook the cliff that we just talked about, and so they're able to dominate a huge portion of the Hudson River. And this is why, as you can see from these replicas, they all have wheels, as this is something that these would have had, since they would have been able to be moved around and therefore basically point to different parts on the river to target different ships coming in, and therefore taking advantage of the wide angle that they have to fire. Here you can see where the soldiers defending the fort would have stayed. To be clear, the structures seen here are not the real ones, since the originals have unfortunately not survived from the 18th century. But the ones seen here give a good idea of what a fortification hastily thrown together would have looked like, and how and where the soldiers would have lived. I'd like to conclude here by talking about the public history aspect of this site, talking about what it means for the public generally in this area, and what it has meant for me personally as someone who lives just 10 minutes away from here. So for the public more broadly, this is a great area where people are able to enjoy it in a number of ways. There are hundreds of people who come here every day to walk, jog, take photos, and otherwise taking advantage of this cool little forested area, otherwise surrounded by the very urban area where I live. Uh, but besides that recreational park aspect of this site, it is also very important for public history. Anyone who walks around here is immediately notices all of the different historical aspects of this location. There is the visitor center right when you walk in, and there are a number of placards that explain each location, including some of the ones that we visited, like the cannons and the cliff overlooking the Hudson River. Not only that, but there are several events that are actually held to make sure that what happened here is not forgotten. Every year there are reenactments of what happened, of the retreat of Patriot troops from the British. I had seen the one that happened in 2018, and the Fort Lee Historical Society is quite active in perpetuating this knowledge of the events that happened here. So apart from that more broad public history aspect, for me personally, this site has been quite interesting. I had learned about it several years ago, since my cross-country team in high school actually would practice here, running around this site, since my high school is just minutes away. And so I was always amazed by just kind of walking around here, and also jogging and seeing all of these cool historical sites, and realizing that actually happened here long before there were some of like the high rises and general other things that are in my town, and that's something that happened all the way over 200 years ago, and it continues to be something that I'm fascinated by, even as I learn more throughout the research and production that went into this video. And I think that's really the takeaway here, that anywhere that you live has something in terms of its history that you can always look back on and in some way, shape, or form connect to, even if it happened quite a long time ago. Thank you.